Hello. Good morning, Aurora. I see that there is some people who really enjoyed yesterday. I hope you guys slept well. I hope you had some fun yesterday, exchanging with your colleagues, meeting new people, and obviously enjoying the beautiful city of Duisburg. My name is Tomasz Waliczko, and I'm going to be a moderator of today's discussion. So, what are we going to discuss? Our topic is Innopreneurship, from paper review to revenue. We are going to learn what is the journey of students who decide to transfer from academia to a very competitive and challenging world of business. Our panel discussion is going to be divided into 3 parts. We start with the paper part. This is when we are going to discuss the academic impact on the startups and the students. The second part is the revenue part, where we are going to discuss market entry, scaling, sustainability, and obviously a revenue of the startups. Finally, I will ask one question to all the lovely participants to summarize the whole discussion. Right after, we'll proceed with the questions from you. So please, make notes and ask the questions at the very end. We will do our best to answer all of them. So, let me start with our participants. She's a partnership expert and a clean tech founder from Berlin. She has been a mentor for over 100 startups. Please welcome Lena Katharina Bödeker. And next participants of ours, it's a co-founder of Paged AI. That's a social tech startup fostering inclusion for the neurodiverse people in a digital space. She's a researcher in a cognitive science. And she was awarded as a voice of economic transformation by Bertelsmann Stiftung. Please welcome Dana Pietralla. Probably one of the most recognizable people in the entire Aurora. She's a professor of Copenhagen Business School, an expert in sustainability and social startups. Please welcome Anna-Karen Hüske. And finally, last but not least, a professor of IT, a shareholder at University of Duisburg-Essen, a leader of Place Beyond the Bytes and a member of the vibrant Ruhrgebiet startup ecosystem, Professor Hannes Rothe. So, since I started with the ladies, now I can ask Hannes something. Hannes, you were teaching and you were a mentor for many startups. Most of them, like some of them at least, had the postdocs and the PhDs as members. What are the biggest obstacles for transferring the theory, the knowledge they have, into a practical product?
All right, okay, well, first of all, thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me. So again, we have to distinguish between different target groups. If we talk about PhDs or postdocs, it's typically PhDs or postdocs who spend significant times in the sciences, meaning life sciences, natural sciences. Most of them that I've been working with are from life sciences, because the predominant amount of people who do their PhD do it in chemistry, biochemistry, and the medicine. So, and you have to imagine those people typically spend their entire life within a lab or within the university. So for them, it's typically quite a huge step to go out, basically, into the real world. And that regularly means that there is a huge logic shift. Like there's a shift in how you approach things when you suddenly have to think about, oh, I'm leaving now the lab. And that's the biggest leap, I believe, and it's something that we try to attribute to when we do teaching, when we work with PhDs and postdocs in our programs. But because typically, kind of once they approach it, once they leaped over that gap, for them it's pretty easy then to kind of adapt, but that's, I guess, the biggest step. That's typically.
Okay. Is there like, how can you describe this difference between the master students, for instance, who are doing startups and the postdocs and the PhDs, like in the mindset?
Okay, is this also going to be then? Okay, good. Yeah, so I think first of all, it's the time that you spend in university that makes a significant difference. That's the first. The second is there's a little bit of self-selection going on. So people who do their PhDs or postdocs do that for a particular reason. So therefore, those people typically have decided against money already at least at one point in their life. So because if after your master's you could potentially go into industry, but then you decide, oh no, I'm going to do a PhD. And then some of them decide after the PhD, oh no, I'm going to do postdoc or lab, become like working in a lab. So that already makes a big difference. Because you already kind of have then certain people who have decided against money a couple of times, and now you want to convince them to, oh, now you go into industry, which is, again, leads to that bigger leap. And then also, typically it's also an age thing. So when you do your PhD or your postdoc, you're typically then afterwards in your mid-30s. That is also significantly different than working with people who are in their mid-20s, because the life situation is different, the aims are very different. Typically, you have already a different perspective on your society and your surroundings.
Okay, thanks a lot, Hannes. That was very inspiring. Anna, maybe the question to you right now. A lot of startups, when they start business, some of them, they skip sustainability. How can we make sure that they implement sustainability from the very early, like the seeding phase of their existence?
Yeah.
I think. Yes, please.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for the chance to contribute. I think it's the question, like you said, you start from paper to revenue. We need to put it in a bigger picture. Not just see the business, but see the society, see the environment around it. And I also know from colleagues working as business developers, they all make the pros, I'm interested in sustainability, but it adds a completely different layer of complexity. And then they scare away, I have to do this, I have to do this. I'm too busy and too much into the details at this stage. I think we need to start not thinking just about the product, the customers, but earlier, what do we want to do and contribute to society? And I think if you, or my experience is, if you talk to entrepreneurs, they not just say, I want to make money. No, usually they have a service, they have a product, and they think about their customers. And if they think broader, not only investors, customer, but include more stakeholders.
How may you actually interest student in this way of thinking? How may that be done?
I think it's the framing of courses. That we not say, this is the business model canvas, develop your product, but say, what is the social problem? And then start from there, what could be a solution, and not start from the solution already, but put the frame larger.
Okay, I understand. So no business model canvas, but rather a bigger picture, bigger society.
Later, the business model canvas.
Okay, understand. All right, thank you very much. Question to Dana. You were studying at the top world universities like NYU, University of Berkeley. How does the knowledge, how did you use this knowledge in your startup? How did you implement this to your AI solutions?
Yeah, so first of all, I think studying at those universities you talked about, or doing research there, that was actually also a huge part, getting motivated to get in business, to found a startup. Because I think in general, I mean, it might be a bit different now, but a few years ago there was like this huge startup spirit, especially in the US, in Silicon Valley, and especially in Berkeley, there was a great force also from in the lab, from the professors, from the people working there, getting the ideas out of the lab and into the world. And I think that was a different thing, a different vibe that I perceived there in comparison to, let's say, Germany. I studied at University of Cologne and in Austria. And I love this. It was really special because I think that's something that should be done more at German universities, let's say, or in maybe European universities in general, to really get the knowledge out there and not just have them stick in the university labs or in the papers, but really bring them out to the world, because there are so many problems we have to address right now, and there are so many smart people working in university, students studying great things, but really bringing the ideas out into the world is much more beneficial, because everyone will benefit from these things. So I think, first of all, it was this kind of like startup entrepreneurship vibe that really took me and brought me into being an entrepreneur. But another thing also was that when doing my research in Berkeley, but also at NYU, we worked together with other startups, we worked together with industries. I did my master's studies in cooperation with UC Berkeley, so I really had it was a great collaboration to have on the one side the science stuff, and on the other side the stuff that really helps people. So my master thesis was about medical images and whether AI is better in having a look at medical images and giving the right diagnosis in comparison to doctors who would, let's say, have like thousands of medical images they have to diagnose, and really have these things, having this very practical thing that I could do science on was actually great to me, and I think having this perspective and also having this knowledge that science works with industry, works with economy, and not without. That was actually a thing that I took with me to when I got back from UC Berkeley and from NYU, and I actually brought into my startup now, because for me, I am a scientist. I love being a cognitive scientist, but I want to use my research and my science background to really make a difference in the world and make a difference for neurodiverse people, for in the science and health background, in the science and health area in general. So I think actually it's just a whole bunch of things that I brought from my research in the US. Yeah.
Okay, that's quite interesting. Well, you said that in US it's more practical than in Germany, right? So maybe you can advise something. What can be implemented in the German universities that may bring us a little bit closer to the US in terms of the startup ecosystem?
So first of all, I think really motivating the students from, also as you said, Anna, from an early stage, to bring them the idea, okay, you can use the knowledge you get from lessons or sessions you take at the Hörsaal, from just general classroom meetings, from book clubs, whatever, just like getting in contact. You can use this stuff to make a difference and really motivate them. It doesn't have to be a business, of course. They just make a difference if it starts off with a small blog or a small, I don't know, any kind of small thing that might grow. And I think not putting the level of like do a business, do a startup, that's maybe like a huge thing people might be a bit frightened of, but just like put it very, very easy, just start something, just have a look at what it might be. And I think motivating students, maybe also having like these things inside of the study program, right? Like building some kind of small prototype of anything that might do good in the world. Having these things inside of a university program, I think that's actually a great thing to really get students motivated at an early stage of their scientific career.
Okay, that's quite interesting. Thanks a lot. Lena, then the question to you. As a mentor, again, you saw a lot of startups, you met a lot of people, and a lot of them are from academia. Maybe we check another side right now. What are the behaviors that people have from the academia that are actually disadvantaged at the business market?
Yeah, interesting question. From my experience, right? So I actually founded one startup together, or I tried to, with people who both had a PhD and were had more of an academic background than I did in that sense. So they came from research, and one of them had also did a PhD. And what I really noticed there is that they were very much, it seems like they were afraid of a lot of steps to go into the real world, to talk to people, in the end to talk to customers, not to talk to anyone of course, but I think you know what I mean. And I think that stems from research often being, especially in Europe and in Germany maybe, being in the lab, right? And not going outside and looking making the connection back into the real world, so to say. And so I really noticed that building this business, I mean, first of all, I needed to acquire a completely new skill set, which is fine. I mean, they both knew how to learn. But then to really apply this into real life problems and to see how it's marketable, I feel like that was something, the questions that they asked themselves were different. It was rather, why would it, like, how can I solve something? But it was not, is this something that should be solved? Or is it something that the public needs? Or is this something that, in the end, also if you think of it a capitalistic way, is it something that someone will buy, right? And these questions are as important as, can I build this? And I feel like a lot of universities, especially the more research it gets, it's more about, can you solve this? Can you build this? Is this like a technically feasible problem? But they are not asking if it's something that the market needs, the market wants, that's feasible and viable. And I think coming back to the business model canvas that you mentioned earlier, I hope that most of you have seen it at some point. And there's one very, very interesting view of it that I often like to show, because it actually shows these three things. It has the technical feasibility, but also viability and desirability. And I feel like in research it tends to be forgotten that desirability and viability are as important as the technical feasibility.
Okay, that's quite interesting. I mean, I can already tell the pattern here, that the universities, at least here, right, in Germany, they are more practical, they're more theoretical, less practical. And that's quite interesting what you say, that there's academic world, and then there's this real world with the real problems. And in academia, people usually focus on solving the problems that may not have reflection in the markets, right? How could you maybe suggest, is there any way to change it? Maybe any courses, any programs? Because the people who, again, start the startups usually are at some age, so they are not like there.
Yeah. I mean, I think it goes a little bit along with what you said in some examples. I mean, I also didn't study, for example, in Germany, but I studied in the Netherlands and Denmark, and I had a very applied student program. So in Maastricht, where I studied, we did this problem-based learning. I wouldn't say it was super entrepreneurial, but I mean, we worked on real-world problems, let's say, from corporate companies, and tried to solve these. I think that's a very small, easy step, right? To see, okay, how can I apply this problem-solving skills that I'm learning, and how can I apply the technical skills that I'm learning to problems that are already out there or questions that are being asked in the market. And then the second is, I think there's so much to do which can be offered by the university, which is not only the core skills, but like pitch trainings, like pitch competitions. And for example, I participated in a program in school already where it was from Boston Consulting Group, where you were asked to look into companies, but then also to create your own business idea and pitch it in the end. And we were taught a lot of skills. We got mentors alongside, so I think it's also like to get external mentors into universities and to get maybe even startups that are already out there into universities and ask them, hey, maybe you can need the help of a student, and the student learns the skills from the startup, right? So I think just having a lot more partnerships and cooperation, that would help a huge deal, because in the end these are not tough skills, but the more you get used to it, and I really saw it even at big German corporates, some of the engineers who had PhDs and were incredibly smart people, they had a thinking pattern that was very much like, okay, is this something I want to work on and want to solve, and is this technical doable? But they never asked themselves if this is something that actually their customers would want, and that's an incredibly important question to ask yourself. And it's not a difficult question, but you need to be aware that you should ask this question.
Okay, so I understand that universities should more collaborate with business, right? Because the business at some point provide those soft skills like pitching and so on, which are required in the business world, and also provides this foundation of what actually market needs, right?
Yeah, just want to take a small note. It doesn't need to be commercial businesses, right?
Okay.
It can be NGOs, it can be even clinics, governmental organizations, but just making it more adaptable to what, the, let's say, outside university world is working on.
I saw Hannes shaking head. Does it mean yes, or it was just shaking hand?
I don't know. I think I would put a little bit more cautious to that statement. I believe that our primary job as a university is not necessarily to solve only real-world problems, because if you're looking at some of the big theories, some of the big kind of technologies, they had no application at the beginning, like many of those, right? And that is totally fine. We need to have some people in the world who do not always look at, okay, what's the world at the moment? What pressing problems do we have at the moment? Let's try to solve them. It is absolutely our job to also have people running around here, running in the ivory tower, coming up with interesting ideas that maybe in 30 years someone is going to pick up and then going to create an application. That is, I think, really also probably our main task. I think the bigger problem for me is, and this is now when we come back to entrepreneurship, is we in Germany, we do not have, we are not good at this transitioning stuff. So a lot of the technologies that we develop, I mean, we can look a little bit into that direction where they develop nanotechnologies on a really like great scale, and these technologies might have great applications at some point, but they are not economically viable really yet. What do I mean with transition is, my feeling is that in many of these technologies and theories, someone else is going to apply them. So basically someone in the US is going to pick up that knowledge and then is going to apply them, and then they make that money. So that's our biggest problem, I believe. And one of the reasons why that is because the scientists that we train are very good in the ivory tower thinking, and we do not help some of them figure out, okay, can I also apply them? So we have to do actually both things. So we have to be a little bit careful to not now make everybody entrepreneur, because then we don't have the ivory tower sciences anymore, which we also direly need. What I really like, and you brought the example of Berkeley or the United Kingdom, what I like, so they have programs where they basically force everybody to do entrepreneurship once in their life. In the UK, they have PhD programs, basically as part of every PhD in certain domains, for instance in the life sciences, to do an entrepreneurship training. So in Berkeley, there was a program, I'm not sure whether it's still there, so it's called BPAP, I believe. Every external person who is coming from abroad, every postdoc who's coming from abroad, and Berkeley has many of those, is forced to do a week, and that week includes entrepreneurship programs. So everybody who comes to the campus has to do that. That is, what they do in, I forgot the name, the university, Leuphana University, where every student is forced to do an entrepreneurship once at the very beginning of their studies, no matter what you study. So that forces everybody to, at least at once in their life, think about entrepreneurship. And then some people will say, that's nothing for me, I will stay in the ivory tower, and that is totally fine, because we need to have these people as well. But some will pick up that idea and then at some point think about, oh, entrepreneurship was something, so maybe I can also apply whatever technology I see in my lab. And that is the part that we're missing at the moment. So that's why I was kind of nodding a little.
But I totally agree. I just wanted to say, I mean, I never meant to say that everyone should have the same education or everyone should be an entrepreneur by trade, because I think the skill of being an entrepreneur and actually start a company is always a combination of skills. So you need that deep matter topic expertise that we're actually really great at. But what I meant is that we need this extra training on top. And that doesn't mean that the thinking will be completely different, but you have an access to those skills and know at least what you may be missing. That's the start.
Yeah, that's, well, I also personally agree that if we teach people to be leaders, but not everyone is going to be a leader, because if everyone is a leader, then nobody is a leader. Well, there's one thing that I found quite interesting. So Johannes said that every idea, that university is quite a safe place, and everyone can come up with the idea and the theory. And at some point, this theory may actually be transferred to a tangible product by someone else from whichever country, whichever place. So I think this is quite an interesting conclusion to that academia is a space to experiment, and it's quite safe. Right, from this safe space of academia, we can go right now to the part of revenue. So question to you, Dana. In your business, you have a very interesting and very noble social mission. Many people challenge this, that it is not possible to make a revenue and conduct it together with a social mission. How do you balance it?
Yeah, I think this is also similar to your question with the sustainability, right? So I think it's not an either you're sustainable, either you're social, or you make revenue. It's not this either or. But of course, it is a challenge, and it's also a balance you have to take. I think as I call myself a social tech entrepreneur, and at some point the social part of it weighs more, at another part the tech part weighs more, and I think it's always something I have to balance in my day-to-day business life, basically. And there are periods where the social part is more present, basically, and at some point the tech or the revenue part is more there. Like, let's say at the current moment, social and sustainability topics have a hard time right now. Of course, this is a hard time, I would say, also for social entrepreneurs in general. So you really have to think about, okay, maybe at this point we really have to put the social part a bit in the background and have a look that the tech or the revenue part works even better, because these are hard times, let's say, and maybe it's not at the moment super. Maybe it's not like the best time right now to really do the best social stuff that you want to do. But I mean, the nice thing is that I think social entrepreneurs are basically the better entrepreneurs, because they do money with helping the world or with doing good stuff. And let's say entrepreneurs who would not call themselves like social or sustainable or whatever, they do money, and that's great, obviously, but maybe they do this at a cost for the planet, at the cost for other people, maybe, and they do not have this social good in their view side, let's say. Yeah, so I think in general, I think it's actually a great way to get into entrepreneurship, because on the one side you have this part of your brain, your heart saying, I want to help the world, I want to help people, and on the other side, of course, you have to be very practical, right? You need money to stay in business, to finance yourself, your employees, your partnerships, your office, whatever. So yeah, at the end of the day, I think it's actually a nice struggle you have every day, because you have the money making on the one side and the social and sustainability part on the other side, and that's actually a lot of fun. Yeah.
Okay, I have actually two follow-up questions. Maybe the first one, could you give us an example of what are these social parts, tech parts, financial parts?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so as you said in the beginning, basically, we at Page.ai, we are working on solutions to help neurodiverse people in the digital space. So on the one side, we have, like, as you said, I'm a cognitive scientist, a psychologist, so I have this part of me saying I want to help people. So that's basically the social side of me in Paged. And on the other side, of course, there's this entrepreneur who can't just say, okay, whatever, I'll just help you, I don't mind if I get money. No, I need money, right, to really build a business, to pay myself, to do the good things I want to do. So that's maybe like the most typical thing. So oftentimes I also have like collaborations with let's say, NGOs or people who don't have a lot of money, and they, we talk about making it possible, and there's a struggle there as well, because on the one side I want to collaborate with them, maybe they have like great ideas we can put into practice together, but if there's no money at all, or there's just like very little money, I have to say, okay, guys, I'm very sorry, but I can't do it. I can't do it, because if I go into the social stuff too much, then the revenue part like gets too little attention. So as I said, it is a struggle. But on the one side, on the other side, I just like don't want to collaborate with the, let's say, like the bad guys in the economy, right? And maybe the money is good, but I don't really have the fun of helping people. I don't really have the it's generally not a good vibe. I don't want to work with people where I really get, okay, they're not really interested in making the world a better place, or maybe not even interested in having the same vision as we do with Paged. Yeah, so basically that's like a struggle that I have. Yeah, but as I said, it's always a bit different, and it's always fun, and you maybe also sometimes you have to shift your focus.
Okay. Okay, that's the second question, but actually this is a question for both of you, for you and for Anna. So if there is so you have a social entrepreneurship startup, to say the next time, like properly you can say that. Does it make it easier for you to enter the market than the startups who are not social entrepreneurships, because you provide already a solution for the people? That should be easier, right?
Again, so make it easier for me in comparison to other startups who are not social.
Correct.
Yeah, I think so. When it comes to, let's say, customer needs, or maybe the needs of the people, then probably yes, because I think we target the needs of people better than other startups, let's say. But I mean, when it comes to, let's say, being more efficient money-wise, we might have a slight disadvantage, right? Because other startups might just like, okay, we just like have the price as low as possible, but maybe, as I said, this goes at cost for other people, for the planet, whatever. So yeah, let's say for people or for the society, maybe we have an advantage. Maybe for when it comes to money, we might have a small disadvantage, I would say. Yeah.
And would you add something?
Yeah, you are speaking from the practitioner side, so I can only repeat it. I think what you also said is more or less, we have entrepreneurship, we have tech, let's use it. And again, relating back to this picture, what I was hearing in the whole panel reminds me of this Mason idea. Do I build a stone? Do I build a house? Do I build a cathedral? We train the students to work on the stone, but we should remind them, what is your cathedral? So also inspire them. And also what you said, is it easier? You have a much more holistic approach. You already know your customers. So it's not, I have the solution, let's fit it to the customers. So it's maybe, it's maybe more complex, more time consuming, but in the end you are maybe closer to the optimal solution from the beginning because you are more holistic. So more long-term sustainable or viable.
Okay, once
we need universities to tackle the complexity.
Oh, definitely. Don't leave the mic, there's another question to you. Once we speak about, well, that's definitely an advantage for the social entrepreneurship. But since we speak about the revenue, do we actually so we speak about the stone, right, from this cathedral. Do we focus enough on the revenue side so the people at some point don't forget that at the end they should actually make money on that and at least per minimum to survive? Are we doing this enough, or something else could be done in this regard, or?
I think revenue is the means to make it work and deliver, like you said. If you focus too much, then you become an NGO and you maybe can't sustain, and then you don't help the people because you vanish. So it's always this, like you said, this balance, keeping revenue, but also or keeping. I remember when I attended, and some of you did this maybe as well, when we had the German management conference, we had the CEO of the Otto Group, and she said, train your students, think of cash flow. And that's not even revenue. If you run out of the cash flow, even though you have the revenue, you can't pay your bills. So you need, like you said, Excel 3 sides, social side, tech side, and also entrepreneurship. So a lot of tools to learn.
Can you maybe share with us, how do you implement those 3 pillars in the social entrepreneurship education?
I think it's really what I said in the beginning. Think about what is really the social issue, understanding it. And this is also one thing what we tend to risk, and please compliment from your practitioner side, but the entrepreneur, social entrepreneur is an idea, then you need to bounce it. Does it work with the customer and so on? Then you go to your investor. They have maybe other ideas, what kind of social enterprise or what kind of company they want to finance. And then you have the customers, what do they want to buy? But do you still have the beneficiaries in mind who you really want to benefit? So there are so many stakeholders to manage and to balance, and it's so easy to just get driven away by one side.
Okay.
So we need to learn more to listen and also think about whom we need to listen to, not only those who have the power in terms of money maybe, or not only those who are crying the loudest, but also maybe thinking who is not at the table at this stage. Okay. So trying to get the complexity on the one hand, then also trying how to implement this in an entrepreneurial, innovative way. And what I'm seeing also more and more from our social entrepreneurship and innovation competency research, understanding the problem, having entrepreneurial means, but also having the ability to listen to people and let them participate. And what the analysis shows, this is the first step. And this leads back to the panel discussion we had yesterday, asking for more and more empathy and putting ourselves in the perspectives of others, and then getting it together again.
That's actually a very good point, perspective of others. I mean, our universities are growing, and we have a more and more diverse group of people. Some of them, they decide to stay, let's give an example of UD, some of them, they decide to stay in Essen or Duisburg, but some of them, they come back to their home. And that means that some of them, they come back to the parts of the world which might have significantly different social issues than we have here. Is there any universal teaching that we can provide that fits to all different regions, or shall we focus on some regions, or how might that be addressed?
I think on one thing, can't you learn the same skills if you look at different regions? Because in the end, it's still, again, listening, getting all the different perspectives together, which works everywhere. And I also have a double degree with Germany and France. It was such a fun to having the theory-driven German university and go 3 semesters at the Grande École, getting much more practitioner-oriented and a completely different style to study. And then going back to Germany, I took much more, and this is typical for us double degree student, took much more seminars than maybe the classical students that you take both sides. It also helps you enlarge you, and I think this is also the mission of Aurora. Put the people in different perspectives to learn. Okay. And didn't you said this before the panel also? It was cool to study in a program with students who had completely different bachelors and see, hey, they see the world completely differently.
Right, thank you very much. Lena, question to you. You were a co-founder for the clean tech startup. These are the startups that usually requires quite a lot of investment. How the students, how someone who is a very beginner in startup world, how can you simply explain the moment from which you have an idea? Like, how do you bridge the gap between the idea and the product, like financial gap?
Yeah, I think super relevant question. And I think this is also where universities can be a big help with their networks, and to give also give some credibility to the students and their teams. And I think one start, I mean, of course, in Germany and Europe, we do have a lot of public funding and grants. So of course, I would always start going to that. So actually, you know, but that's then also a task. I mean, we have more of academia here, so it's your task to also know about those and to be able to inform your students about those options. To like, there's competitions, that there's often public European grants, there's local grants, and often the universities themselves, of course, also have grants that they can give to the students. So that should always be the first and easiest step for the students. And then afterwards, and I think, again, this is also something where academia can help a lot, and it can be even the teaching staff and the professors be connected to the ecosystem, meaning maybe to some investors in their fields, maybe some corporations that give out funds or give out competitions. So try to network in that direction also for your students, so that you can show them which options there are and maybe make some first introductions. Because how it works in the end in the entrepreneurial world, it's often I need someone at the beginning when I have an idea to vouch for me. So I need to ask someone for an introduction. And it works a lot through those warm introductions, because if I just write any investor and they've never seen me, then the chances of them answering me are very, very low. Versus if I get an introduction, I would say they're very high. Or if I get the chance to go at least to a conference where I can meet them. So in the end, I think that's where especially academia can help a lot to show these options and give access to them.
Okay, so I understand that the first point of contact is someone at the university who may provide the knowledge about the grants, public funding, and so on and so on. What would be the next step if the students, because the public funding, it is really cool at the very beginning, it is a nice incentive, but it will not provide enough financing to invest more technical, more complex projects. What would be the next step?
Yeah. I mean, what I was already getting at, so not only the public funding, but also private investors, corporations that work in the field. And I think there is a lot of programs right now from universities. So the last half year, I worked actually at Unternehmertum. Obviously, they are building up a huge ecosystem. They have 500 employees, which is still insane to me, to just support startups. And they don't only do that, they also work with governments and corporations and so on. But their ultimate essence is to support startups, to find investors, to know how to start companies, and to get clients at the beginning. And so that's where I would go. I mean, I would see, okay, what events are there, what ecosystems are there around, and to really see how can I get connected to the private investors, to business angels. But again, I think that's also something where universities can be of a big help to create these exchanges. What we're doing right now, for example, I briefly talked about it. I'm supporting right now Uni in Berlin, which is also one of the Lighthouse factories. And they have more than 10 million in private funding from companies like Tesla, Telekom, Bayer, and so on, Sparkasse. But they also got 10 million of public funding, and their main job is to connect startup with investors and with corporates, so that they can really have the time and the finances and resources to build out companies. And those institutions, I would say, and most of them are NGOs, but there's also some private ones, it's really their job to take startups from this initial research area to this next step of financing. So be connected to them, find them, and I think that's something that I would urge the students, but also the academic body to really do.
maybe follow-up question to Hannes. From the local perspective over here, what may student expect if they approach you and say, okay, well, I have a startup, and I have a startup idea, and I want to develop this idea, I want to get funding. What students from UDE can do, just to narrowly focus on our university?
Okay, wow, good, yeah. So first of all, I would distinguish between, I would spend this a little bit up, I guess. I would always distinguish between, let's say, 3 different types of startups. So let's say the social startups that have no tech, then the startups that have low tech, which I would consider also AI to large degrees today, because basically now everybody can vibe code, everybody can, within a weekend, create at least a first prototype, I guess. And then the high-tech stuff, the deep-tech stuff, like the nanotechnologies, like the medical devices, like some of the technologies that you're working on, I would consider more deep tech. So why is that important? Is because they build different stuff. So if you build like a nanotechnology that is not yet ripe and applicable, your customer is just not yet there, right? So you're basically targeting customer in 5 years. That is a totally different story than building, let's say, an e-commerce platform for a very specific target group that is running around at the moment. So that is very different. So I would always distinguish that. And then if they approach me and I figure out, okay, which are you, I would then have different conversations. So we have 2 incubators at our university, the co-creation lab, that product innovation in Essen, which is more for material sciences, so they have 3D printers and all that kind of stuff coming from chemistry. I run Place Beyond Bytes, which is for digital startups, so if anybody builds digital startup, we have different programs, we have workshops on basically main business modeling with digital technologies, MVP production, analytics, vibe coding and stuff. So we would help with the first prototype. And then we do have a great partner at the university, so Helga is sitting over there, that's the one smiling at the moment and winking. So she's from Guide, so Guide is our tech transfer office, so they also have great programs, and they are basically also helping them with finding grants, finding the right partners in the network that we have. So we have a quite extensive network, not only in Duisburg-Essen, but also in the wider area. And we also have a startup factory, this kind of lighthouse similar to Cologne that also has one. So we are quite fortunate to have pretty deep contacts to very large corporations that are in the area. So this area is densely populated with big industry. And to very large investors as well. So what does it mean? It's actually quite easy. So the problem that we have as a society is not a lack of money and a lack of partners, but really a lack of ideas. Like we really have, our biggest problem is the number of people who come with great ideas or interesting ideas. I think there are enough support structures that we have. The number of support structures is not the issue. We have to develop more and more ideas. That's the biggest problem. And ideas come from very small ideas, from ideas shallow tech, from students, let's say, to deep tech ideas from research groups coming from here. In all of these areas, whether it's here or in Berlin or in Munich, we have not enough ideas. We need many, many more. So therefore, everybody is encouraged. So money is not the issue.
Yeah, money is not everything, but it's difficult to run a business without it. And that will follow the next question. Could you share with us probably the most successful business model, like revenue models from which you face in academia, like from the academia spin-offs? If there is something that pops in your mind.
Like revenue model from a startup that has spinned out of university?
Yeah.
Wow, okay. I mean, there are quite a few, right? I think the most successful ones probably are, most of them are kind of can be found in pharmaceutical or medical domain, I would guess. Like when it comes to the amount of revenue, I would guess. So if they are super successful and you license it out to large pharmaceutical companies, I mean, BioNTech probably was the most famous example that everybody was aware of. I mean, until 2 weeks ago. So if you don't acknowledge the more recent news. It was actually super successful, so they had billions in their pocket because they developed technology for over 20 years and they finally found a way to first license it out, parts of it out, and then potentially create an array of new applications within the cancer domain. So, and that produced tremendous amount of cash. That's probably the most successful one. If you're looking more in the digital domain, I think the most prominent ones are platforms. So current ones are like software platforms like N8N in Berlin at the moment, for instance, is one of the bigger ones. So those are platforms that have software as a service revenue schemes. If you're looking into more successful hardware platform, probably we have to look into defense tech at the moment. The most successful one in Germany probably is Helsing, I guess, from Munich, which basically produces drones of all sorts and types, and we can think of it what we want, but it's currently quite needed. And they have huge contracts with different military providers. So yeah, which then is a revenue where you basically have large lump sum contracts with some of the public bodies. Yeah, it really depends on which domain. So.
Okay, so it varies on domains. Thank you very much, all of you, for all the fantastic answers. And now, let's sum up this whole session with one question. It's one question for all of you. We'll just follow the order. If you could change one thing about how the universities and industry and investors interact to speed up paper-to-revenue pipeline, what would that be? Or maybe there are more than one. There's more than one thing. So please, if we start with you.
I think we need more platforms to get them together. Mm-hmm. How do you find the investor you need? Mm-hmm. Whom to get together? Okay,
so like the information, like every university, what I understood, should have a platform specially dedicated for the entrepreneurship when the students can find all the information, right? Or
I think just a website or an artificial intelligence telling you is not enough. You need someone who's able to make these formats. Like you said, Hannes, we are lacking ideas. I would say it's also the social system in Germany which is not incentivizing. You are stepping out of your, I have a job, I can pay my rent. The people will see me as failure. Compare yourself to the US. It's a completely different if I said. So it's also a mindset change on the one hand. Mm-hmm. And we need, what I said with the cathedral, maybe more and enable the people try it. I remember one serial entrepreneur from Copenhagen. She said, no one taught me. They were like, hey, you get a master from Copenhagen Business School. Why don't you go to the Big Four? Go to a consultancy. Why do you start a social enterprise? So it's also the mindset on the one hand. And then we need, so she was like, I didn't have a female role model. I didn't have a role model. But we also need these ways how to get the people more together, create these ecosystems.
Okay.
To make it an option.
Okay, I understand. So there is more focus on, so actually cooperation with industry make this idea quite heavy that the students graduate, they have to go to the consulting instead of doing entrepreneurship, right? So the industry on one hand supports the students by providing the very practical skills, but on the other hand, they just steal them from this entrepreneurship ecosystem, right? That's what you mean?
You can't blame the industry to have good heads, or to want them. But I think it's also the society and the expectations. I remember one professor in business administration. He's now close to retirement. He was asked, why do you study business administration? Why not law? Why not medicine with your grades? So it's also, what do we tell the people? What is the picture we paint, what you need to achieve? And is it having a high income? And if you think about the current generation, they are getting more and more lonely. They are asking for more than just an income. So maybe we need to reframe also what is it just a job to pay the rent and then I need to maximize leisure time to find purpose somewhere else? Or can we get this together again?
Okay, interesting approach, thank you.
I would say I think we need more courage and risk-taking from basically all of the partners. I think you said students, right? Universities, investors, industries, these parts. And this doesn't mean having like irrational risk, like being stupid. It means more like calculating the risk and having courage to go forward and have a look at if it works out. And I mean this regarding, as I said in the beginning, on a small scale, being a student and having a small idea inside your book or journal club and just trying out, does it go anyway if I go into this idea? This refers to universities, of course, like as I said, being or giving courage to the students, to the people working there in fulfilling their ideas in the startup or in any venture idea they have, but also regarding, let's say, investors, having being courageous when it comes also to investing, because especially like for, let's say, for female startups or for minority founders, they still have a hard time of getting funding, right? And that's also because like investors say, yeah, we don't know. We have a lot of startups in our portfolio, like with like male startups or like majority male startups, just an example, and like really having the courage of going new ways for funding options, for also like how your life turns out, basically. I think also, especially in Germany, we're a country where a lot of families or people in general are focused on security, job security, having a secure life, and I think, Hannes, you were the one telling, especially people in your 20s, they have like, they may be like not as much settled as people in their 30s or 40s, of course. And I think we should use this, right? Because in your 20s, you're gaining a lot of experience in academia, but also maybe like still having the courage of going ways you didn't think about earlier. And yeah, I think that's something we need more from the different stakeholders, having being courageous and taking risks, not stupid, but calculated risks.
Taking risks, thank you.
Yeah, so when I thought about the question, the first thing that came to my head was that I think in the end, academia and research should think more like investors and vice versa, investors more like research and academia. And what I mean by that, and I think it in the end goes with what both of you already said, is that investors often really jump on the most fear of missing out topics. So what's hot right now, what's anticipated, but they don't always look at what are really the problems. And what we said earlier, if you look at problems from a really, every entrepreneur is taught to look at the problem and solve a problem and start from there. But what are the biggest problems? They are always social. How can a problem not be social? It's about humans, right? If it's not a huge problem, it has to be something that's either health or social focused. And if you think like that, that would really be great for investors if they go down more to really, is this really solving a problem, or is it just something that's nice to have? And for the academic side, more like thinking, okay, but is this something that people out there would really want to have like this? Is this something that really makes an improvement for our world as well? And I think then coming back, this beautifully connects, because in the end, how do we solve this and how do we achieve this? And I think it's through communities, through platforms, and also through taking risks. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Okay, wow, that's a super difficult question. So maybe if I zoom out a bit, why am I doing this all, like this entrepreneurship stuff? I'm actually a professor in information systems. I could also not do that. But what I love about entrepreneurship education, especially with masters, PhDs, postdocs, is I'm regularly in a room where I'm surrounded by people who are much cleverer than I am in their particular domain. And that is actually quite cool because I always learn something. And when you have entrepreneurship education or entrepreneurship programs, you regularly synchronize these people around a particular topic. So, and I would like to create more of these opportunities. So we have started doing this. We have this Master of Innopreneurship where I have students who study something entirely different. I'm looking at you now. So an architecture student who basically now thinks about entrepreneurship. I mean, I know that you think about it longer than our own program, but he has a totally different perspective on living than I do, right? And that is something that I found super interesting, right? Because if I had only economic students around me or business students surrounding me, they would not have the same perspective. And that is something that I find very intriguing by entrepreneurship education. So what I would like, if I have a wish, what I would like to do, I would like to have more of these situations where we synchronize people around entrepreneurship. Whether it's a forced European-wide week where every member of a university has to do entrepreneurship education for 2 days. And entrepreneurship education, by the way, I don't mean like boring accounting stuff. That's totally irrelevant. Entrepreneurship education, I mean, is we sit down for a day, think about a super important problem. Then the next half day, we think about a potential solution that is easy to pull off, and then try for the other half day to scribble down how we develop that thing. And by the end of the second day, we probably have an idea whether we should approach that solution or not. Mm-hmm. So that's what I would like to have. Ideally, every member of a university, even better, many universities across Europe, having that for 2 days, once a year, probably will make a difference. Because then, even if nobody approaches these ideas afterwards, they would, for at least 2 days in their life, they would have started thinking about, oh, how do I approach problems? How can I think about a solution that is easy to pull off? And I think that would be interesting, especially because then you bring people together like Noel and me from very, very different perspectives, and that would be, I think, a curious exercise.
Okay, so just to summarize, we need to have starting from the very beginning, we need to have an easy access to the information so the students know where to go, with who to contact, how to get support. Then the students need a courage. And that's actually quite interesting because usually people, when they start startup, they are alone. But as you mentioned, Hannes, this is a group activity, and there are people from a different faculties, different backgrounds. And once you have this support, I believe that this is something that pushes you forward, that motivates you, and you get the courage. And then also another thing that you said, that, well, at the end of the day, most, if not all, the startups are social startups because we solve, in a way, social problems. So that's also quite interesting. All right, thank you very much for all the answers. And now that's time for the questions from the public. Any questions? Over there.
Thank you very much for a really interesting and stimulating discussion. I was really struck by the idea about cultivating a change in the conditions around entrepreneurship by having that last suggestion of like a requirement for the whole university community to participate in entrepreneurship education, like a couple of days every single year. And I'm really interested in that idea. But we all know there are finite resources, there's finite amount of time in every single working day. And I wanted to move beyond the sort of education for undergraduate students and master's students and just think about those who have chosen to pursue a career in research, who've chosen to pursue a career in academia, and how we begin to create a change for them as well. Because there are so many pressures to advance in career in terms of publications, in terms of research grants and so on. And I just wondered, from your experience, are there ways that work for incentivizing the attention to this issue? There are always going to be individuals who are passionate about particular things, and they are going to do it no matter what. But to bring that whole community change among those who are starting out in their academic career, what would turn the dial in terms of incentivizing? I don't know, is it recognition, ways of factoring it into career development, and just what your suggestions are around that?
Okay, well, first of all, I think that there are a lot of skills that you use in entrepreneurship that are pretty applicable to what you do in the sciences, for instance. So, I mean, a few of my former PhD student postdocs that I've been working with, at least one of them kind of attributed her ERC grant towards these workshops because she says, so ERC grants are weird. I've never applied for one, maybe I should, I don't know. Career-wise probably would be a wise choice, but but she said ERC grants are weird because you have to attribute like this huge problem, and it brought her this kind of problem-oriented view. And she's from molecular biology, so that is nothing that she was basically doing so far. So, and it brought her this type of thinking. So what we've developed in the Postdocs to Innovators Network, which is an alliance of different universities, University of Duisburg-Essen included, is we developed based upon some of these entrepreneurship skills, a canvas that you can apply to research. We also have an online course currently ongoing, so every postdoc of the Aurora Network is also heavily invited. So I think that's something. If you want to stay in science, however, I know a few academics who have always been in science and at some point in their life decided, what if I try something else? There is a chemistry professor here, I forgot his name at the moment. Helga probably knows his name, so he's very end of his career, I think. And he's now venturing out into entrepreneurship because he says, well, I have all these fantastic papers, but I would love to also see some of my stuff in the real world. So he's now venturing into entrepreneurship at the very end of his career, so you never know, right? So where you end up, so. And 2 days, I think, is worth our time. Considering that it's our third mission as a university, I think we could invest 2 days, but that's just me.
Anna, would you like to add something? Would you like to add something?
Tomorrow, the institutional coordinator of Aurora sit together and work on the bridge funding for the next 2 years, envisioning the next 6 years, and my brain is already going in this. Can we integrate this? Putting together maybe also online, leveraging the interdisciplinarity of Aurora on the one hand, and also letting our students maybe have a 2-day social entrepreneurship workshop, I don't know. This is what I see from this. And I agree with you, we can have a lot of lists, and I remember when I did my higher didactical training, content reduction, content reduction, content reduction, so this is the other side. But also what you said, finding quick solutions will help us to get the courage we need. And this is also the idea, if I teach social entrepreneurship, I don't expect that they come up and set up the enterprise afterwards. But if they say, hey, we have huge problems, but I can contribute to making a difference, then we already achieved something in terms of education.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Thank you very much. Any other questions?
Thank you so much for this very interesting session this morning. As I'm a professor of economic geography at this university, I'm interested in a very specific field of innopreneurship activities, the field of regional embeddedness, of startup ecosystems, and these regional local impacts and effects. Perhaps you can explain a little bit how important are these regional structures for founding of startups and so on. For example, in Germany, we have got a very big startup center in Munich with many startups. There's obviously a special framework for such innopreneurship activities. Compared here in the Ruhr area, we have the city of Gelsenkirchen. It's quite a little bit more difficult for founding activities. So can you explain a little bit these regional embeddedness and regional effects of innopreneurship activities?
Just a quick question. Who would you direct this question to?
That could be flexible. Perhaps Hannes can start a little bit and all the others also.
Yeah, I'm happy to start on this. Since I said earlier, I worked with Unternehmertum the last 6 months. I'm working with Uni now, who's trying to set up something like Unternehmertum in Berlin. And then there's similar activities with BRIC in Essen and other institutions. And it's tremendously important, and for several factors, and I don't know if I can list all of them right now, but first of all, I think one of the most important, and that goes back to the courage, is the role model perspective of it, because you cannot be what you don't see, right? So I need to see that it is possible to build up a startup out of my research or my educational department. I need to see that there are people doing it, and ideally I do know those people, or I know someone who knows them. And I also know, and that goes back to what I said earlier, who I can contact. Like, is it the professor that I can ask for introductions? Is it a startup hub that I can ask for introductions? And where I can get my first points of knowledge. And then adding to that, in Munich, you now have an ecosystem where nearly every startup that's been founded in Munich goes to some sort of Unternehmertum or maybe LMU program. So there's barely any startup that does not have any touch points with them, not going to any events of them. And that creates such a strong ecosystem where investors, politics, corporates and founders really come, and universities really come together and co-create this because it is so visible all over the city and it's so accessible because they do so much. And yeah, I mean, if I would have a dream scenario for European or general universities, is that every university creates hubs like that, which are access points for all of these. For also politics and corporates and investors and the students and academia, where they can all come together and profit from each other and each other's knowledge.
Hannes, would you like to?
Sure, I can. I mean, that's a huge topic. We could probably have an entire panel discussion just about that topic. Maybe just to illustrate one point. So I came to University of Duisburg-Essen 3 years ago. So before I was 14 years in Berlin doing entrepreneurship education in Berlin as well, working on some of the predecessors of what now has become uni. So my problem in Berlin was always not to have enough potential founders, because we had a lot of students coming to Berlin to start companies. So barely any of my students were from Berlin, like originally. They came from all sorts of places. So therefore we always had the issue, okay, so we had now these founders, they want to start companies. Many of those are business to business. So meaning they have their customers are also companies. Now, if you know Berlin a little bit, Berlin is a great place to live if you are below 35 and don't want to buy anything. But Berlin has no companies. There is just one headquarter of a large company, which is Deutsche Bahn. The rest is basically marketing departments, lobby departments, and that's it. So huge services, but nothing else. So the problem of our founders was always their clients are somewhere entirely different. So now I moved to Duisburg-Essen, and here it's vice versa. So we have tons of companies around that all have like serious issues, like ThyssenKrupp has issues, like they currently try to build that hydrogen thing. A lot of different companies here in that area, but we don't attract the same types of students. Our students are very different. Our researchers are different because we attract different ones. I'm not saying worse, I'm just totally different. So therefore the issue is a little bit different. And that changes the ecosystem as well. So if you want to build up like a low-tech service thing, it's great in Berlin. If you want to build up, I think, a defense tech military industry, it's not a great place. Munich is much better because Munich has some factories in the surrounding. There's BMW heavily investing into some of the elements as well, and especially into Unternehmertum. So these ecosystems, and therefore, depending on what you build, some ecosystems will be a little bit made better for you. And I think that's something that we can carve out a little bit better, I believe, and that's currently what's happening, I guess.
Dana, would you like to add something? Or no? Okay, then we can proceed to the next question, probably. Let's check the one.
Yes, many thanks. Hannes already introduced me. I'm Helga. I'm working here as a startup coach. And I'm by heart an inorganic chemist, and I know really the problem coming from research and the long way in deep tech, what you really to go over. You have not 1 or 2 years of time you set up a company. It's taking years. And really to keep them by heart, to work on their invention, to go further into entrepreneurship, into a company, to form a team, to get financial support, and grants, takes a lot of time. And that's really where we work together and where we come really to see, to get in touch early with the researchers and to help them. And I think there's as well more support needed by regulations. If you think about deep tech, it's about in medicine, and if you need lab space, where can you get them? And there are so many different topics. So it's good to have an early introduction into entrepreneurship, but also to get them moving forward, to make the ways easier, and to know really the parts to talk to. So I'm really curious to hear, Lena, how was it for you? So when do you start it? With the idea in circular economy, now climate energy, clean energy. How long does your path take, really, from research to forming a startup?
Yeah, thank you. Interesting question. I think it depends, right? I mentioned that I briefly worked with a very research-based startup, and I came in as a co-founder later, as a business part, and the 2 other women were working on it for 2 years already, but one of them actually even longer because I think the research was already 6 years old, and then one of them took over and the other one joined. So it is possible to join at any given point, right? You don't need to be there from the start. And I think it goes back to what you said earlier as well. Obviously, you have to distinguish what kind of idea it is. Is it a really deep research topic or even a hardware topic where it takes a long time to really set something up? To really get a prototype that can take years. Nowadays, if it's a software or AI-based startup, I mean, you can build a prototype in a weekend or even a day. And then you can go out and try to adapt it to the market and to market it and so on. And the other ideas that I was working on, one was clean energy. There it was more a governmental or bureaucratic problem why it took so long, because we wanted to buy. So in the beginning, we thought about producing fossil-free gas, and then we switched to buying it first so that we can generate the income to then eventually set up our own facilities to produce it. But the long thing, or the thing that took most time, was the bureaucratic process of setting up a gas provider. It was not really building the company. So that's why it really depends on which kind of setting you're in. With medical topics, it can also take years to get the medical right to actually be able to sell this, even though your product is done since years. So, and that's also something where I think startup factories can be a huge help to inform and give guidance and to see how you can bridge the funding, because often that's a huge problem, that maybe your product is done, but you need to wait due to bureaucratic reasons, and you need to bridge that time, and you need to have an income for the founder for that time.
Maybe to add 1 or 2 more things, I think it's also a personal question, right? When it comes to when are you ready to leave science, leave research, and go into the real world, as we said it oftentimes on this panel. Because like for me, I basically was a student when I moved out of research and into entrepreneurship. And there are some advantages, there are some disadvantages. I think one advantage that I had as a student, you're not used to a lot of money. So basically you need some money, but you don't need a lot because you basically have none anyway. So that was, actually a good thing because, yeah, I didn't like fall from a huge paycheck when, let's say, if I'm 40 or 50 to like maybe no money at all or very little money. Because let's say if you're like a professor and you already have like a huge team with several PhDs and you think about leaving research and going like founding your company, I think, I mean, this is my position, but I think it's a bit harder, right? Because you really you got used to like the living conditions you have gained along the years, and as I said earlier, that's also because, like, as a 20-year-old, you're much more flexible in life. You maybe have like in a year or half a year. But if you have like a family, if you have a house, if you're settled already, it might also be a bit more difficult. And it's not impossible, of course. I think especially with the support that university is giving you, whether you're a student or a professor or whatever, it is possible. But of course, let's say in my position, that was actually a benefit because yeah, I wasn't used to a lot of money, and yeah, as a startup founder, maybe in general, you can't expect to be wealthy in the next month. I think that's in general a very important thing you always have to have in mind.
Thank you very much. I think just checking the watch, it's slowly time to say thank you very much for all of your wonderful answers and for coming here today. It was a pleasure to host this event, and thank you all for coming and listening to us. Thank you.